Welcome to another episode of Dear Marketers. I'm here with Jenny and Devon, and we're excited to talk to you about all things product launches.
Are you excited, Kramer?
Talk about product launches? Oh, because I banned the phrase like I'm excited about in marketing. I'm excited.
Oh, we're excited to announce that this is our episode about product launches.
Let me do this again.
I'm excited to announce that today we're launching an episode about product launches. That's how you say it.
Okay. Welcome to Dear Marketers. I have a launch announcement to make. Today we are launching this podcast. It's about product launches, and I'm here with Devon, launching from her studio in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and I'm here with Jenny, launching from the floor of her house in Oakland, California. And she sits on the floor for these things. Nobody knows why. She does have chairs in her home, don't worry. And I am launching to you from Lake Winnipesaukee, New Hampshire, of all places.
I'm also thrilled to announce that Kramer has launched a new product on her face. These lovely glasses. They look great.
It's my glasses.
I'm really into it.
I didn't want to launch my glasses today. They're for reading, but I'm having some weird migraine, blurred vision situation, so I thought it was my only chance at maybe being able to see my notes for this episode. So
it's a bundled launch. This would be a good thing. Can we come back to this? For best marketer, we should do like, how do we thread the needle between Kramer's glasses and the product launches podcast launch?
While I can't read my notes very well, I am sure that was not the best marketer game, and we have something a little bit better at the end. No offense, Devon. All right, so let's launch this podcast about product launches, and let's go to Typeform straight away here. We have a question from Crystal, who's the head of marketing at Guideline. So let's hand it over to Crystal.
Dear marketers, I'm Crystal, head of marketing at Guideline. So in the olden days, product launches used to feel like glorified checklists. You get the company announcement out, stand up a new landing page, deploy your email comms. But I think we're all realizing that the one-time launch is a miss. And it's important to build a framework to sustain momentum over time. So my question is, how should we be thinking about product launches in 2025? Not just as a single moment, but as a steady drumbeat and system. Thank you.
I am excited to announce that we are moving into the first part of our podcast. So I want to do a lightning round, as I have started to do every episode. The only rule this time, while you need to be as fast as you can in your answers, that doesn't mean you need to talk fast. It just means the content, less content than a full answer. I don't want you to say it depends. Even though for every single one of these things, it does in fact depend. So we know they all depend, but let's say as definitively as we can what we think.
Completely out of context, yes or no?
Those are the only options, yes or no.
No,
can we say
there's
maybe?
More. You just can't say it depends.
Okay. We're just checking.
You could say anything beyond it depends.
We're just aligning on the scope of responses.
If we had a taboo card right now, it would just say it depends and have nothing else on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. I got it.
Should you launch on Product Hunt in 2025? Sometimes.
Probably not.
Should you write a press release, like an official press release?
Sometimes.
Probably not.
Should you make a launch checklist?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, but don't just copy and paste and do the same things as before.
Correct.
You broke your own rules.
I didn't say
bespoke
it depends.
launch checklist doesn't mean it's a...
The spirit of the answer is kind of it depends.
Yes, you should make a launch checklist, but be wary that it can send you down the wrong path. Should you sell ahead? We're not on the sales team, but should you encourage selling ahead by sales and marketing ahead? Should you market ahead of the actual launch?
I don't know what that means.
I say yes. I think it's nuanced.
Devon knows what it means.
Yeah. It like pre-announce.
Okay, then yes.
It doesn't necessarily mean pre-announce.
We think we're going to have this product in X months, X weeks, and so go out and sell it as if we have it today, which...
That I don't know about, but like marketing ahead would be like, let's start building some SEO content around related keywords because we're going to have this launch in 4 months. Like that, I think, or teasing things, like inserting it in places where it makes sense to insert it and to talk about roadmaps and what is coming next and stuff like that, but not necessarily actually like sales pitching it.
Yeah, yes to dropping breadcrumbs to the launch.
Okay. Gretel. So bad. Some of my podcast jokes are just like my dad joke level goes higher.
No,
higher.
Gretel was great.
All right, thank you.
approve.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Should you meet with product weekly up until a launch?
No opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's a weekly meeting necessarily, but you should be in very close, probably more than weekly contact with the product team leading up to launch, depending like at various stages of the product development.
Okay.
Yes, I guess that's my short answer.
Should every feature get a air quotes launch?
No.
No.
I'd say definitely not as well. Should you build your whole marketing strategy around product launches? Thanks to our season-long partner Typeform, which has been my go-to form builder for years. And you've almost definitely filled out a Typeform before too. Maybe you've even used it to build a waitlist for a new product launch or to gather feedback before releasing a new feature. But Typeform can do a lot more than help you build basic forms and collect responses. You can add logic to create forms with multiple paths, or build a video form. You can start from a template or build your own from scratch, and even add your brand kit so your forms feel cohesive and on brand every time. You can enrich and score leads automatically. You can use AI to summarize responses and even send those responses to 300 plus tools. Use code MKT1 to get 20% off their annual growth plan. Let's get back to the show. So, we've talked about some things, given some opinions here so far. I want to launch the next section of this launch podcast, which is called The Old Way of Launching. Am I going to do this thing where I'm launching the sections of the podcast throughout this episode on product launches? Yes, I will. The whole time.
Would you say we're launching in phases?
I would say we're launching in phases, which I think...
It's a rolling launch with continued
rolling
pushes
launch.
for adoption. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which is a good way to launch.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Every time I launch a new section, I'm hoping to draw you in even more. I don't think it's working. But, you know. All right, so 10 years ago, which we were all marketing, I think we were all marketing together on the same team at Asana 10 years ago.
Not quite.
Maybe Jenny wasn't there.
Yeah, I wasn't.
Jenny
quite
wasn't there. This always happens. Jenny wasn't there yet. But anyway,
It was
Devon
like
and
maybe
I were.
8 months later.
Devon and I were definitely marketing together. We were launching products left and right over in Asana. We were like, here's a dashboard view of your tasks. Here's a calendar view. Here's a Kanban view. Here's a weird chat feature that's not real chat that nobody wants.
We're definitely launching things the old way.
We sure were. So what you used to be able to do is you used to be able to build this launch checklist. It would have a list of channels on it. It would have a list of assets you'd need. You'd write that blog post. You'd pitch that press person. And maybe you'd throw it on Product Hunt towards maybe a little later than 10 years ago. But you throw it on Product Hunt, you know, bing, bang, boom, signups, usage galore. Everybody's using it.
Mm-hmm.
Not entirely true, but you could get traction on a lot of those channels. You could get press even for medium to large size product launches. And it did feel like people cared about product news and that it was a really great way to get users re-engaged and excited, and even to drive word of mouth. Like we would send these designed emails at Asana about a product launch to our existing users, and then we'd get like tons of people forwarding those emails, which I just can't imagine that happening now. Unless it was like maybe some really, really, really wow AI feature. But for most companies, I just don't see that happening these days. So I want to talk about why, and I want to talk about what you do now, and why the old playbook will not work, and what the new playbook that you should build specific to your company is.
Yeah, I think one launch that we were all a part of at Asana, I think, because this was after Jenny joined, was Track Anything, which was actually just custom fields was the feature name. And it was just adding a field to a task in Asana. It was actually kind of like the least interesting. I mean, I guess it was interesting at the time because before that you couldn't. But we did very much the old-fashioned way, right? The checklist was a blog post. We had like a hype video that showed some customers. That was cool. To our credit, I think we did a good job actually centering the launch around use cases, hence Track Anything.
How you use the custom fields.
Yeah, so that was cool, but like we got covered in Forbes for that launch. We like got a ton of web traffic and new signups that day, even though it was like a little bit more of a down funnel launch. It was one of our premium features that we charged for, but we got a ton of free signups anyway. So like, yeah, we definitely followed a pretty old school playbook. It was like one launch day.
Well, it wasn't
right?
old school at the time. I mean, this
Yeah.
was literally 10
It
years
was
ago.
new
This
Exactly.
was the
No, no,
playbook
no.
and
10
it
years
worked.
ago. Yeah.
It was new school then.
That's right. And we were all in like a war room too. That was one of the funny things about these launches too, right?
Oh, yeah.
Although I think, did we call it a peace room at Asana?
Yeah, I just thought War Room was very violent.
Yeah, we called it a peace room.
I mean, it was partially to be funny, but yeah, we would call them peace rooms. Not like everyone at Asana, just marketing. I think that was just me being a total weirdo. Jenny, do you have any fond memories from those days of launching things?
I think this was after your time, Kramer, but one launch that stands out to me is when we were launching kind of our full suite of products for the marketing vertical, and I got up at dawn, went to the office, because this was pre-pandemic, so I went to the office on Bryant Street, and pushed buttons to ship like 12 versions of the blog post, because at that point we had localized to all the languages, so anytime we did a launch, there was the launch blog that then got translated into 11 other languages. So that was fun.
Without AI.
Without AI, yes.
And like manually pushing each of those posts
Yeah.
live.
I just remember always negotiating with our comms person who was actually just staying at my house and left mere hours ago. But that's besides the point. But I remember always negotiating with her because she would be like, we have got to start this product launch process at 6 a.m. West Coast. And I was like, no, we don't. Just tell the journalist that we are not doing the kickoff. Like the embargo time is 10 because I do not get up that early. And I think there is still a push to do a lot of things at once on the day. But I think it's a little less. Product launches are now less driven by what the reporter that's covering you as the exclusive is telling you to do, because that's just much, if that's happening, which it's usually not, it's a much smaller piece of the puzzle and it doesn't drive the whole timeline like it did before. So no more reporters making you get up at dawn for product launches. Thanks to our partner Framer, a no-code website builder for projects and startups of any size. I love Framer because it feels more like a design tool than a CMS. It's always been easy to use, and I just launched new features that make it even better. You can now type a prompt, and Framer will generate a layout you can modify and build on, so there's no need to start with a blank canvas for a web page ever again. If you're adjusting your homepage for a product launch or creating new product or landing pages, it's great for that too. They also have built-in analytics with click tracking and A/B testing, so you can test and improve your site right where you build it without third-party tools or slow, messy scripts. Apply to their startup program and get their $900 launch plan free for a year at framer.com/startup. Let's get back to the episode. All right, so why does the old way no longer work?
Partly because the evolution of the channels, right? I mean, we've talked about there's less interest in covering product launches. There's also just less traditional media literally in existence now than there was 10 years ago. We've talked on the pod before about like email saturation with like, AI generation of like outbound sequences and harder to break through kind of via these traditional channels that we're used to using for product launches, I think is one thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think even during my time at Asana, I saw the difference in just like press coverage and how much traffic we were getting from that. Like when I first joined, I could see in, the dashboards, I was like, oh, this launch post got a bunch of inbound from like press coverage. And then by the time I left 6 years later, that was like not true at all.
Not true.
So just within that 6-year time frame. In addition to just like oversaturation of channels, I think the other thing to keep in mind is that in addition to like competing with your direct competitors from like a product standpoint, you're also competing for audience attention with everything else out there, right? So like in the hierarchy of content needs, I guess you could say, I don't know that product launch news is high on the pyramid for most people.
Yeah. I think that's true. Standing out is just harder now. There's more products. It's easier to build products. It's easier to create content. There's more of that. So it's harder to stand out. And yes, you don't just have your competitors to worry about. You have everything the audience cares about. And so there's just more noise, and you have to stand out in a bigger way, and you're not going to stand out just following a checklist of the same old channels. And that's for everything, not just product launches. But I think we see it most in product launches because that used to be something that was just like very templatizable.
Yeah.
Like everyone just had this template. In fact, I was looking to see if at Market One we have a template for a product launch, and I just don't. I never made one. And I think it's because I'm like, everybody already has this template. I do have like a campaign launch template, and maybe I'll make one now. But it was just like everybody had one and they had it in their brain, and it was a standard thing to do.
Yeah.
Anyway, all that's to say is it's just you have to differentiate, you have to stand out. And so if a product launch goes wrong, there's lots of reasons why. And I was inspired to ask this on LinkedIn. I call this a pre-post. I said, scenario, you're a product marketer. You've been planning for a big launch for 2 quarters now. The launch comes. Nobody in your ICP cares. Growth is flat. Why does this happen? What went wrong? What were the missteps? And got some great, very thoughtful answers yesterday. So thank you to everyone who commented on the pre-post. What stood out from you all about the reasons why launches go wrong from our friends and fans on LinkedIn?
I had a couple of favorites that stood out. I had Ksenia here. She said, that's exciting, but also quite broad. It could be a market fit miss, channel fit miss, positioning miss, internal misalignment, or just a classic mistake of treating a launch like a one-day event instead of a process. You really got to diagnose to know which one. Really like this one because in product launches, very long and involved process. So things could go wrong at any stage. And I think she really makes a good point around how it's not just a one-day moment. You have to think about the before and the after. And I think it's so easy to just kind of like check off the launch checklist and be like, we're done. And then forget to like create that sustained momentum, make sure.
It's back to Crystal's question. Like you can't just do a launch. Like you have to think about a launch system or the system in which it fits in. Yeah, that's a good one. All right. What else did you like?
I think a lot of people centered around like your ICP doesn't care, right? And they're like, okay,
Right.
you probably didn't understand your ICP, right? Or you didn't have the right messaging for them. So I think a lot of them went back to like message market fit or message channel fit. And I think a lot of that comes back to that earlier alignment with the product team and with leadership too on like, what are we actually building here? Who specifically are we building for? What specific problem are we solving for them? What is this product and what is it not? And what are we expecting to get out of this launch? Because I think a lot of it actually comes down to like misalignment of expectations, like thinking this is going to be a big top of funnel new customer acquisition driver when in fact it's much more aligned to a different part of the funnel or something like that. So I think a lot
and the best thing to do for that is to align on a GACCS, GACCS, which I talk about in every podcast episode, up front with all the stakeholders. Make sure everyone agrees on what the goals, what the audience, what the channels you're thinking about using, what the creative is going to be. I did that in the wrong order, whatever. And who the stakeholders are and who's involved and even what the cadence that your meeting is on. So that's the kind of cream work to help you there. But I'm jumping ahead to solutions here and we'll start talking about problems. Yeah. So I think Devon, Melissa H summed this up by saying the key part, meaning in my LinkedIn post, was nobody in your ICP cares, which leads me to a few questions. Is it actually your ICP? If the answer is yes and they don't care, it doesn't seem like you understand them well enough to have proper positioning, impactful messaging, etc. Which leads me to wonder if you properly enabled the field. Did we actually beta test and actually validate enough of the right things? But I think this goes back to another thing. So I said that in the post, your ICP doesn't care. And then everyone's jumping to, oh, well, you didn't have the right messaging. But this is a classic thing that happens where people misdiagnose if they have a fuel or an engine problem. Another one of my most popular frameworks, which is that you need to have fuel and engine in almost everything you do in marketing. Fuel is all the things you create, the creative, the messages, all that. And the engine is how you distribute it. And it could be that your ICP didn't care because they didn't see it. So it might be that you had the perfect messaging and you just didn't get it in front of your ICP. And people did mention distribution channels as well, but your ICP caring you could have had great messaging. And that's where people get really tripped up. They're like, oh, we must have said the wrong things, when it's like, well, maybe you just didn't reach them at the right place at the right time with the right message for that channel and all of that. So that stuff all needs to go together. The fuel and engine alignment with your audience has got to be perfect for the launch for it to really fly. Any other faves from the LinkedIn comments?
What was your fave, Kramer?
My fave was from Keith Putnam Delaney. He has a startup called Primer. He says, No validation. You never pressure tested the story or the channels with real buyers. And that really means like product is working in a vacuum but don't blame that all on product. Blame that on the connective tissue. Weird way to phrase this. The communication, getting into internal organs here. The communication between the go-to-market team, sales, marketing, even support and product aren't there enough that you've been able to pressure test the story, or, someone's not listening to somebody else here. He also said stale positioning. The market shifted during the 2-quarter build, but the narrative didn't. And this is why I really liked his. The other point was good. This point is great. This is happening all the time right now. I'm advising a company that's AI for HR, and their positioning needs to change literally every month. Like, not the whole thing, not who they're selling to, but the why it's better or the what is it needs to change because it's evolving so quickly. Yeah. Like, when they first started, like, teams and HR didn't know that they could use AI for this, that, and the other thing. And now they do. And now you have to compare it to competitors. And now you have to show the efficacy because people know that now they just want to make sure it actually is working and it's worth using and engaging with. And so it's changed so rapidly. So if you're planning a launch for months, and even if you do the GACCS brief and you get aligned on the core messages, you might need to evolve them. And I think marketers tend to not be that nimble, and you need to be that nimble. You need to be that nimble, especially now. You need to be that nimble with the channels you're using. You need to be nimble with the formats you're using on creative. Like, video was working super well at the beginning of this year on LinkedIn. It is not working well now. So you have to be nimble. And I think right now, with everything changing in go-to-market and with tech in general because of AI, that is like even more so the case. So I loved that line. His last comment was leaky funnel. Clicks came, but the path to the first aha was full of friction. So interested on arrival. I think that's also really key. Like, marketing can tend to work on something and sales can tend to sell it. But if you don't get that onboarding piece, whether that's product driven or self-serve in the product onboarding, or whether that's onboarding through a sales or an upsell team, like, you just don't bridge the gap and get to that aha moment. Or maybe you don't know the aha moment. So I thought all three of those points were pretty good.
Fun fact, Keith and I worked together at Dropbox when I was there for that year.
I thought that might be the case. I thought that might be the case when I said the name. I actually categorized the comments.
Oh, A+.
I used Phantom Buster, not a sponsor, just a cool tool, to gather the comments and put them into a CSV. I then put that CSV into ChatGPT, and it grouped them. And then I didn't love the groups, so I gave it some updated groups, and I regrouped them again. And then it gave me a list of the most popular topics and how often those things were mentioned. And I made a bar graph that I'll put in the video version, which also took 2 seconds. So here I am using the tools I'm talking about. But the top category was lack of market validation and customer feedback. This is just in the answers that people gave on LinkedIn to that question. Lack of market validation and customer feedback, with 8 mentions. There were like 50 comments. Weak or misaligned messaging or positioning with 6 comments. Not understanding or misidentifying the ICP, 5 comments. Product wasn't solving a real problem, 4 comments. Distribution and adoption challenges, 4 comments. Internal misalignment and execution flaws, 3 comments. And then focus on a single day launch only, or not thinking of it as a longer term project, with 1 comment. Does that seem out of order to you when you look at the bar graph? Now, obviously, we weren't trying to have people rank this. This is just looking at the mentions and like what people said. Does any of that seem out of order to you in terms of what are the most common reasons why launches fail?
I mean, glancing at this, I think overall that's what I would expect. Like, I think the top most frequent answers all go back to those product marketing fundamentals, which are really about like really knowing your audience, what they need, what they care about, and then kind of building out all of the other pieces around messaging and positioning around that. So yeah, I think you had said, in one of your newsletters before that, like, product marketing should probably be called audience marketing instead. And I think this data,
one of my first newsletters, in fact, and I now would say that product marketing to me is really deeply understanding your market, deeply understanding your audience, and deeply understanding your product. And it's really hard to deeply understand your product if you don't understand your market and audience first, because you're trying to position your product in that market. So I don't know, it should be called audience market and product marketing. Audience marketing is still a better name than all of those things. But anyway, yeah, I did say that. And I think that's still holds true, even though I wrote that like 4 years ago. Devon, do you see something that's off in the bar chart?
I feel like the top like 4 or so are all kind of related to you built the wrong thing or you didn't talk about it in the right way to the right people. And I think that distribution and adoption challenges and internal misalignment are lower on the list, but very highly related to that, which is like part of the reason you might be trying to say the wrong thing to the wrong people is because of internal misalignment, not execution
Yes.
flaws so much, but because, yeah, you didn't sit with the product team and product leadership and executive leadership from the outset and be like, what are we trying to do here? Why are we building this
Yes.
thing? What business metric do we want it to drive? And how should the launch strategy follow? And so you end up getting 11th hour feedback from leaders who don't understand that precision and like specific goals, and they ask for a hype video or a PR strategy on something
Or why
where
aren't you
that's
launching
not the
this
right.
as a top of funnel thing right now?
Yeah, why am I not seeing people tweet about this? And it's like, well, because that wasn't actually really part of the this isn't something that we think is going to like go viral. I mean, that's the classic example, right? It's like
Make the launch go viral. Yeah, so that's
Yeah.
the one that felt low on the mentions too, the internal misalignment piece, because really like product launches are something that almost everyone in the company is like somewhat involved with, and so there's just such a likelihood of just being misaligned, and the product team thinking they're building for one reason and marketing thinking it needs to be for a different reason, or just like marketing's like the only way we're going to save this launch is if we describe it this way, and then product's like that's not how we wanted it described, and sales is like I can't sell this, but I've actually been selling it ahead for months. Like there's so many things, and so you've got to have, and this is really the product marketer's job when it comes to launches, is making sure that doesn't happen. I mean, I think they think it's to follow the checklist, but no, it's to make sure that all of the people that need to be communicating are communicating about the launch all the time from the beginning. And that's
They
the
think it's
job.
to follow the checklist, or they think it's to get the messaging right. We obsess over these messaging documents and the language we're going to use on the email and the landing page. And that's important. Don't get me wrong. But that can all be for naught if you don't know who you're trying to talk to and what you actually want them to do. And like, what are the right channels and the right messages given that? If you're not clear on that, you can agonize over messaging all you want and like quote unquote perfect it, but it just still might not land or do what you want it to do.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think that's actually just true even not for launches. Like I see so many companies just in general like spend so much time on the messaging, and they haven't spent nearly as much time on understanding their audience or knowing who their exact ICP is. And like that's backwards. Like you need to know who that audience is. Is there anything that in these LinkedIn comments, not to harp on this too much, this isn't like the be all end all of how people think launches go wrong, but anything that seemed missing that you guys wanted to mention as just a mistake that can happen with launches?
One thing that I didn't see when I scanned the comments was I've been on teams where we get really caught up in just like launching every individual feature that product ships, and then we kind of miss the opportunity to kind of bundle several features together to tell that larger story, show like that larger value to customers. And I think in 2025, if you want to have those big launch moments, you have to think about bundling in order to, if you press is one of your the channels that you want to go after, you absolutely have to do that bundling.
That actually brings up something. I was having this conversation with a company that they're doing a large summit in the fall, and they were like, "Oh, we're really worried that the product team isn't going to launch some of the new stuff for that summit because we really wanted to make that the launch part of the big summit moment there." And I said, well, you actually haven't built a product launch muscle really at all at your company. You just haven't had people on the marketing team to do that. And so you actually have never like officially announced a lot of the things that you do. And so you don't want to lie and say that this is brand new, but you can also this is just an explanation of your overall product. Something small can be new and you can use that as a hook, but you can say, here's a reminder of all the things we do related to this use case. We've launched this feature to make this better, and then talk about a lot of these things. And so I think people think it's actually very much living in the old like press driven launch world where you think you have to have something new that's never been talked about before. But actually in your launches, it is a great opportunity to recap things that you've been talking about, or that you've had for a long time that maybe you haven't talked about as much, or maybe they've gotten better because of new things that you've launched. So it doesn't need to be that you launch everything the day it is shipped. Like, you need to be building the drumbeat of talking about your product features, and there's lots of ways to do that don't necessarily center on like today is the day, essentially. Was that clear?
I think it goes back to Crystal's idea around this launch system, right? Like each kind of launch announcement that you put out, it's part of that drumbeat. It's all part of the same song. I think, especially when you've got like different PMMs.
Lots of music metaphors going on
today. When you have different PMMs on your team owning different product areas, I think you sometimes get that tunnel vision of like, well, this is my feature. I'm going to roll it out. And like, that's it. And then you kind of miss forest for the trees of like, okay, but how does this tie back to the larger product vision and the roadmap, and then ultimately where the company's trying to go?
So somewhat related, and I'm not sure if it showed up in the comments, but timing also can be challenging with launches, right? Because you might actually think you're going to launch something on a day. You might have some day of activities planned that have some like dependencies and require some advance notice, and then timelines slip. And again, I think if you don't have that alignment from an early stage on when we're launching and why, like what is the reason behind this deadline or this timing, because there might actually be very good reasons to time a launch around a certain season or get ahead of something is happening in the market or whatever reason.
Or to bundle it with something
or
like
to bundle
an
it,
event,
exactly.
Or,
yes, that's why it's related. Or to bundle it with something that, again, maybe a different product team is working on.
Yep.
So these two different product teams are like supposedly working toward this deadline, some kind of coordinated deadline. And then if there's not shared accountability and understanding that this is like important to the business because of XYZ, and that this launch is actually going to help us hit our adoption and usage goals, which is usually what product cares about, then you're going to have timelines slip and you're going to end up in a spot where you either have to launch part of it by itself or, delay the whole bundled launch.
I think this is a really good point because people think a lot about bundling product launches, but they don't necessarily think about bundling stories. And so when Jenny says it's all part of the same song, the song is not just product launches. Like the song is really the song of your company. I'm just really like milking this analogy. The point here is that like if you can, because it's so hard to stand out, maybe you want to announce a bunch of your products or a bunch of your features or a bunch of the things that you've built alongside a fundraising announcement. Because fundraising announcements themselves are sometimes hard to get traction for now, but maybe you combine those together. Maybe to our last podcast, you have a booth at an event and you're doing one booth that whole year and you want to announce something in that booth as like a first look for attendees, and you want to tell people to come to your booth at that specific time, and you say, today we're excited to announce. Just like
or maybe you've rebranded and you tie it to that moment.
Yes. Yeah. Or maybe you're just doing a dinner with some of your best customers and you tell them first, and then you do that the night before and you tell them you amp them up. And so the next day they share about it. Like there's lots of other things you can bundle this with. And so if you think of your launch as this product announcement is fuel for a story, well, what other fuel can we use here that we can then distribute, and can we combine it with something else that will make it go even further? And so you're bundling not just products together, but you're bundling all different types of fuel. And that's how you have to think about this in 2025.
It's like wine and cheese pairings. You've got wine is your product, cheese is your content.
Milk and cookies.
Yes. Exactly.
Now gotten 2 milk mentions in.
You need to be thinking about these things, beyond the context of the one launch day, right? In advance, are there content pieces, like I said at the beginning, right? Start working on building some SEO or foundational content around certain areas or topics related to
or
the
GEO or LLMO.
AEO, answer engine optimization. I'm hearing a lot now, which I kind of like.
LLMO makes me laugh because it's like LMNOP. It's like
or LMAO.
LMAO.
LMAO. Yeah, I mean, and also just this idea that like think about what you're doing ahead of the launch to kind of build the groundwork, start to prime the market, to use really silly business jargon, and what you're going to do afterwards, right? Again, I think like the idea that this is one day's worth of activities is also just not going to work in 2025.
Thanks to our sponsor, Revenue Hero. Marketing teams spend so much time targeting the right accounts, writing the perfect messages for prospects, only to lose those leads to bad scheduling. Revenue Hero fixes that last mile drop-off. It automatically enriches leads, routes them to the right rep, and lets you book a meeting instantly. Revenue Hero works for your inbound flows and in-app scheduling. It also works great for outbound emails. You can use their magic links as a CTA, which lets prospects schedule directly with their assigned rep, skipping the form altogether, going directly from email to booked meeting. Companies like Clay, Sendoso, and Freshworks are all already customers. Go to revenuehero.io and mention Market One to get 15% off if your company buys by September 30th, 2025. Let's talk about how to fix product launches and how to actually do them in 2025. Let's launch part 3 of this podcast, which is called The Fix. I'm excited to launch part 3 of this podcast titled The Fix. Devon already sort of covered this. I think Devon might have thought we were already in part 3. Devon was selling
I'm
ahead.
always trying to solve.
Devon was selling ahead. All right. Great launches start before launch day. I want to make a point here that not every product needs a launch, and that can make people really upset on the product team. But it doesn't mean that you're not going to include it in the product, or you're not going to like include it in other things that you might, put out there in the world. It just means it's not going to have this moment where we're like, we're debuting this. Or it could mean that it's just going to be included in a change log or something like that, or it's going to be included in an announcement for existing customers. But it's not going to get the full fanfare.
You can even call it a launch if you need to for your product counterparts.
Yeah.
Just be like, it's a tier
Baby
3 launch.
Little
And the
mini
channels
launch.
are Help Center
And change log. So, but I think this brings up another point. So product launches are a type of campaign. This is confusing to people, but to me, campaigns combine fuel and engine for your specific audience. And usually there's some sort of other unifying theme around a campaign. In this case, it's that you're launching a product. Campaigns can also be, we're doing a campaign around this data report we just launched, or we're doing this campaign to reach this specific new ICP. So campaigns combine fuel and engine for a specific audience. So these are your big initiatives, big projects, and product launches are just one type. It's just the specific fuel here is the announcement of the product. And so campaigns run at all different sizes. So the question is this a big campaign? Is this a big initiative? Is this something that can change the trajectory of your company? And so you're not comparing it really with, you should be comparing the work with other big campaigns you might do that are going to require all hands on deck across marketing, potentially other teams, and say, is this worth doing in comparison to these other types of initiatives, not necessarily just optimizing for which product launch we should do. It's like, is this actually a big moment for us? Or are there other big moments that make more sense? Or is this part of another big moment? So something to think about.
I think one thing that it's kind of easy to get caught up in when you're thinking about whether it's this big enough thing to kind of be a campaign or a tier 1 launch is whether your audience cares about it, which I think is good, obviously. If they're not showing any interest in caring about these kinds of things, like it might feel like a big deal to you, but not be a big deal to them. But there is this element of also like, is it something they don't care about yet because they don't realize how much they should care about it? And in that case, like your messaging is going to be more about like making very clear that they have a problem, right? There's like sort of, are they problem aware yet or not? And if they're not problem aware, then like the main headline is not, look at this solution. The main headline is more like,
you have this damn
helping
problem.
You realize you have this problem and then introducing the solution.
Well, this comes back to one of the first things you should do when you're planning for a product launch, or actually when even the product team is talking about building something, is you should really be doing a GACCS brief from the beginning, knowing that it might change. So again, that's setting the goals, audience, creative channels you're going to use, even though that might change, and the stakeholders who are involved. But also to do a quick and easy positioning statement for that product feature. Mm-hmm. So positioning, you might be like, whoa, positioning takes forever. I'm not going to do it for the feature. Well, like you should. So my positioning framework here, if you will, is positioning starts with understanding what type of product you're creating. Are you creating a 10x better product of something that already exists? Are you creating a brand new way of doing something that combines maybe a bunch of tools and manual ways of doing things? Is this a new way versus old way thing? Are you making something that's 10x better, but for a very specific vertical? So are you making something better for a vertical and where you're kind of, where the other solutions are more horizontal? And then the other fourth category of what types of products things usually fall into is like a build versus buy situation? Are you making something that people are really doing internally right now and they have a solution for, they recognize the pain, but you're actually productizing it? And so again, I'll put all these things in the newsletter. You don't have to remember all the details of this framework, but you need to understand what type of product it is. And maybe your overall product is, I don't know, a brand new way of doing something. But maybe this feature you're launching is actually just a 10x better version of something that another company has. So it's important even for the feature to understand, like, what is this solving? Are these people problem aware? Are they solution aware? Is this something that they have a mental model for? Do they have a budget line item for this? Like, what kind of thing is this? And then from there, you can say, what is the product, and really define what it is. You can say, why is it better than the alternative, than the thing we just described? Why is it better than the old way? Why is it better than the thing that we're 10x better than? And then all of this needs to be specifically based around who is it for. So who is this product feature for? What kind of product is it? What is it in clear terms? And why is it better than that alternative? And if you do that from the start, that will really align everyone. So doing positioning for the specific thing that you are launching, huge unlock. It's almost like a lot of people will do like write the ideal headline, press headline. So many launches are just built around this press cycle that doesn't exist anymore. But write the ideal headline. To me, it's like not write the ideal headline. It's like write the positioning. Maybe do both. Hell, do whatever.
Yeah, and I think too, going back to the LinkedIn thread, actually, a lot of people said, the messaging is off because you're just talking about features and not benefits. Or like we've talked about, like if it doesn't ladder up to kind of the same, if it doesn't sing part of the same song, and if it doesn't ladder up to another Kramer perceptions, right? The song is really your perceptions, probably repeating over and over in the chorus. And then there's different verses that help reinforce those perhaps. And so I think where people get stuck too, where PMMs get stuck a lot, is trying to up level the message in terms of the highest level benefit of this thing. We get lost and lose sight of the concrete sort of like, what is the thing and who is it for and how can people actually use it? So it's important to remember that there's layers of messaging. You are going to want everything to sort of ladder up to that key company story and the perceptions you're trying to drive, or at least one of the key perceptions you're trying to drive. But then you do have to get very much more concrete
granular
at some point. Yeah, get very granular and do the work early to understand really specific use cases. And like not every product is for every customer either. Not every feature is for every user. So it's okay to have a pretty narrow specific view of who this is for, especially if it's kind of an MVP, right? A lot of product teams these days and companies want to ship fast and learn. And so if you're shipping kind of an early version of something, it doesn't mean you can't hype it up and ladder it up to like a really powerful benefit, but you should also have that clarity up front about exactly what it, again, does and does not do.
Yeah, I really like what you said there, Devon. It's like really helping me think about like when I've worked on product launches with PMM counterparts, I think the thing that sometimes feels missing, I think both externally for your audience and then internally for your collaborators, is just that larger context, right? So it's like I might have the specific positioning and messaging and just the what it is of that specific feature, but then we forget that it's part of that larger an external story that we're trying to tell and that overall value prop for the product. And to your point, if it's a new feature that maybe the audience isn't ready for, like you need to kind of build that context in the market and prime them so that they're ready to engage with what you're offering.
And that's a version of selling ahead that we find acceptable, exactly. Which is really starting to explain the pain point, understanding if people have the problem, like putting that out in market. So it's marketing ahead, not selling ahead.
And I think internally, you need to build that context with your collaborators as well. I think in my role as, content lead at a lot of companies, I kind of often get that view of like, wait, this product team is saying this over here, but then this product team is saying this. I'm like, how do they actually fit together? What's the relationship? So if you don't have that alignment internally with across the different layers of messaging, like you internally will be confused and then also your customers externally.
Yeah. I just want to take 2 more seconds to just remind people what perceptions are, because we've been talking about them. Perceptions are just the stories or the high level narratives you want to drive. They're specifically from the perspective of your audience. So what do you want your audience to repeat back to you to really think about you? So these are your highest level storylines. They cover your brand story, what you want your customers to think, things about your product. And so that's really the unifying thing that brings it all together. So again, I'll share that in the newsletter and show notes, but that's what perceptions are. So the frameworks that we've mentioned that are really important for launches so far are writing this GACCS brief and getting aligned on that, doing positioning for the specific feature, understanding what overall storyline it ladders up to, and then using that to figure out exactly when you are going to launch this. Are you going to launch this with other things? And then ultimately using all of that to say what channels are best for this. And also, again, in the positioning process, making sure you're getting really tight on who this is for. And you might have to write positioning for that feature multiple times if it varies by ICP and where they are in the awareness cycle or whatever it is. Because your users might be aware that a problem exists that non-users are not, right? So there's all these things that you need to do, and then you need to put that all together to figure out what's the best engine strategy or the channels that you're going to use. And so that's kind of what we've been talking about, and that's what the template I'll be putting together in the newsletter will be about, is about how to do all these things and kind of the flow chart here. But there's a few more things I think we should talk about in relation to launches. And one is like, we've really been talking about how a lot of the channels we used before don't work. So what are some channels that do work?
Well, your favorite Kramer ecosystem, right? I think if we're talking about getting buzz or, the equivalent of kind of that press moment or some kind of like top of funnel activity and sharing, I think activating your community or partners or, these ecosystem players, as you've pointed out in many of your newsletters and podcasts, I think is just critical here, just like it is with marketing as a whole, to have that ecosystem play. Tap into those folks with product launches as well. Give them an early look, have them beta test it, and then do a quick testimonial or get partners offering it to their clients early or something. Do again, you had to get ahead of this, right? You can't just tell them on the same day you tell everyone else and then expect them to retweet or just, that's still like the old playbook is like, hey, customers
Exactly.
or
Or hey,
fans,
investors, tomorrow this is coming out. Use this exact line.
So you've got to, again, like bring them in early, these true advocates or partners or whoever it makes sense in your industry, and then, truly engage them, get them loving the product, and then talking about it either on launch day or, again, it can be an ongoing thing you do post-launch to keep driving that top of funnel.
It also can be a really great time to, I wouldn't test this on like at the launch moment only, but it's a good impetus to maybe start thinking about doing some work with influencers, with paid influencers, if that makes sense in your world. I'm not just saying that because I want people to pay me to do things. I'm saying that because I think it really does work. If you give influencers, thought leaders in your space early access to the new features, I think people think about doing this with certain customers. They can get quotes and beta feedback. But like you said, Devon, give that beta to these influencer types. And then if, they're not going to write about it naturally, do an influencer campaign, pay some money to get them to talk about it and talk about it authentically and what they've done with the new product or whatever it might be. And so I think there's a lot of ways you can really activate your ecosystem around this. And it's a good way to start doing that. I think the other thing you can do is you can give that like sneak peek to customers, to partners, and like think broader about how you might do that. Like, how does that sneak peek work? What are the materials we're giving people? How can we make our customers look better by talking about this? Those types of things. So those are some questions I think to ask. And I think some mix of the old tactics can work. You just don't want to go down the list and check off every one and think that you're going to get the same lift as before.
Well, and I think that's the trap I see sometimes where it's like you have your launch checklist and you think that you have to check everything off for each launch. And it's, no, this is a starting point, adapt it to the specific goals and needs of that launch or like the specific audience. And then, build in additional things if it's not on the checklist. I think a checklist is by no means, a contract that you have to fulfill for every launch.
You should be taking things off your checklist before you then check things off.
Correct.
Like wiping them off.
Correct.
Before.
Step number 1, update the checklist.
We didn't really talk about tiers. We kind of mentioned them, but this is old advice. But like you should tier launches. So you should generally say, this is tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Like you should do lots of things. And then that should mean kind of what the expectations are for the amount of effort put into it and what the expectations are for what you might get out of it. And you can also say, okay, well, we start with this different checklist depending on the tier. But again, you still aren't just going to check everything off. And I think, again, back to the comment, I believe it was that Keith made in our LinkedIn, which is that things are changing so fast. So you really got to keep those checklists up to date and not say, oh, if it's not on the checklist, we're not going to do it. Like you've got to be creative there.
Aligning on the launch tier helps prevent crying tears later. So,
oh, good one.
Soundbite,
drop the mic.
Also, some of the
really
old tactics, some of the old tactics or old channels, I should say, also still exist, but to make them work, you have to do them a little bit differently. So an example would be, if you are launching a product, the old way was like write a what is product name blog post for SEO, right? Now, like create a lightweight free version of that product on your website for SEO or
use
for,
do some vibe coding.
Yeah, like give away like a free limited
template
version or Yep, exactly. So it's not like necessarily a fundamental shift in strategy that represents, but it's like the way to execute against some of these things, I think is
I think it's just
different.
where everything comes to like kind of everything can come crashing down on you if you haven't realized some of the changes that have occurred in marketing. When you try to do any big campaign or any launch, I said back in my campaigns newsletter, if your team can execute a large campaign across channels with multiple different pieces of creative across your entire team involved, that means that you're doing great as a marketing team. Like that is the sure sign that you have a really well-functioning marketing team. If you can't do that, that is a sure sign you have a dysfunctional marketing team. And so launches being one type of campaign, like if you've got this together and you can do this and make a splash, like your marketing team is in pretty good shape. If you can't, you probably have problems all over the place. And one of those problems might be that you're not doing marketing like it's 2025. You're not understanding the channels that work today. You're not understanding how to stand out through authentic voices and your ecosystem, and that people don't want just generic AI written content about your product. You're not, you're not up to date on the other things you're doing. And so you're not able to segment down to specific ICPs. You're not able to do targeted outbound, like whatever it is. If you are behind in every other area of marketing and what's going on right now, it is going to show when you get to a launch. Like if you aren't using tools and templates that are just using blog posts that you think are going to rank in SEO, like as launch announcements, like you got a problem. So it's really where things all kind of come tumbling down if you're stuck in the past. And so that can make them feel like a freaking nightmare because everything breaks down. Because you're combining the fuel and engine and working across multiple teams and trying to get clear on what's needed for your audience. And if you don't have those things ironed out when it all comes together, bad news.
Well, just one other example of where I think, old channels still relevant, but you just got to do it differently is like, I think there's still room for press and earned media. But you're not going to get that for every little feature. It's really just probably going to be for your tier ones. And on top of that, you got to, and it's to make it happen, you got to bundle it with something else. So where, I've seen success, is, you either bundle it with a data report. So then you use the insights from the research to basically, paint the picture of what the problem is. And then you position the new feature as the solution. Or you tie it with like a big event that you're hosting, or you piggyback onto like a big industry event. Like it just can't be the feature by itself. Like
you announce some crazy numbers, like AI companies that are like, we got to 50 million revenue in 5 days. You like those types of things, or you're just like very tied to a trend that people are talking about right now. So it depends very much on the company. And if you're in an area where the few journalists that remain in traditional tech publications are still writing about that stuff. And so I think there's also opportunities if you're in more of like a vertical industry, if there's like sort of specific people or press that talk about those things, that could be, I don't know, still be a big thing. Yeah, the only thing we missed sort of measurement of success. And I think it's worth mentioning this a little bit because I think it used to be that people thought they were going to get a lot of top of funnel for launches. And I just see that being less the case. And I see really what you should be thinking about is you should really be thinking about, are people actually using this? Which might seem like a product KPI, but really making sure that marketing and product align on what those KPIs are. Because much like the launch itself isn't like a set it and forget it, like the feature shouldn't be like a set it and forget it. You want to make sure people are using it and understanding why they're using it and why they're not. And so I think those are the important metrics here, almost more so than the top of funnel metrics.
I think
metrics,
some
depending on the
launches, some launches can also be good sales accelerators. So for folks that are already in conversation, or good upsell,
Yes.
cross-sell opportunities.
Yes.
But it's not really a top of funnel driver.
And that's a great thing to think about too. Like, this is a sales accelerator. This is coming in Q2. And like in Q1, like let's really make sure we build up top of funnel pipeline so that we've had those initial conversations, because we know that this can come down as like a second conversation and really close the deal, because this is going to speak to the decision maker here. Like, this is really a launch that they're going to care about. And so let's focus this quarter on building that up, like really thinking about the sequencing of these things. I think people don't think as holistically about this stuff as they could.
I think definitely, like, for some people involved in a launch, they're going to focus on a very specific metric for that launch. Like, if you're running the brand awareness campaign or like the brand awareness channels for it, you're going to think about those KPIs. For a PMM, who's the overall like launch owner, I think it's full funnel. Like, I tell PMMs, think of yourself as the CMO for this product. So not only launching it and getting that initial usage and adoption, but ongoing demand generation for this product and usage and adoption of this product. And if this product is in fact a lead into an upsell product, then is it doing its job of leading people into that upsell product? Or if it's an upsell product itself, are we doing our job of leading people into it and giving them like early glimpses into what it looks like, or a freemium version or something like that? So it really is like, even months post launch, I want my PMMs to be owning the ongoing success of that product and how it contributes to the business and continues to solve problems for customers.
But you could almost say that you are the GM of the product, because you are trying to interface with sales and make sure it's getting sold. You're trying to deeply understand the audience and how you're using it, even after the PMs may have moved on to spearheading another feature. And so I think that's why, like, I would almost say you kind of are the GM for that feature, at least for a while.
That is very true, especially if the PMs rotate onto something else, which often happens, right?
Which
it's
often
like,
happens.
Well, we still want people using it, and so it's on the PMM or marketing to make sure that and product and sales. So again, the PMM, I think, plays that role of GM.
There's also a whole other topic here that we're not going to get into, which is like, launching products is a great time to revisit packaging and pricing and where it goes, especially if you have some like free things and things like that. And so this is a great time to do that and to revisit that. And that often is the role of the PMM. I'm just going to like leave that there, but it can be part of the launch as well.
One more thing, actually, which is some launches are big enough and like sort of represent a big enough structural change to your entire offering that they might change your perceptions. Like, there might be products you're launching that actually impact that highest level,
or change your highest level positioning.
Yeah, exactly. So do the positioning for the product itself, but also like ask yourself the question, like, does this actually fundamentally change who we are as a company, or
change our strategy, or the ICPs we can go after?
Or the ICP, exactly.
What I call the marketing decision dashboard, which includes your target ICPs, includes the main levers you're trying to grow. Like, you can go back and say, this changes everything. So that's a really good point. This changes everything. Even if the launch moment isn't necessarily that huge, it could just change everything moving forward. So I think that's a really great point. My final question is, Crystal mentioned in her question something along the lines of, we're now moving into a world of launch systems. So define, and maybe I hadn't really thought about it that way either, but define what a launch system might mean.
I think for me, in simplest terms, it's not one and done. It's within your, kind of product kind of portfolio. It's part of a larger ecosystem of, telling your overall story in the market. So not sure that's the most eloquent, but that's kind of what I'm...
No, the launches need to be thought of as a part of your broader story and also a part of your broader engine or distribution strategy as well. So they just need to be part of your marketing strategy and not thought of as things in isolation. Yeah.
Yep.
It's like an ongoing go-to-market strategy rather than a launch. Like, if you're truly creating a system, then it doesn't start and end with the launch. It's integrated. These product stories and moments and improvements and stuff are integrated into your story, and you're consistently driving top of funnel, mid funnel, and down funnel growth.
They can be a campaign that's part of everything that you're doing, but they can also change your overall marketing strategy in general, depending on what they unlock and open up. And you can't follow a checklist or expect the same tactics that you used to use to work. You need to build a bespoke plan for each launch. A lot of marketing is bespoke based on first principles. Don't forget that when you get to the launch. A lot of the same frameworks used for other campaigns or for figuring out marketing strategy in general work for the launch specifically too, is how I would wrap that up. All right, we have a two-part game, two-part best marketer here. Here are the potential best marketers games. I wish audience could participate, but this is not a live podcast, so I'll ask you too. The first potential best marketer game is to name a product launch tactic you've seen done that should be retired. The second potential best marketer game is what are your launch pet peeves? And the third potential best marketer game is what is your favorite product experience and why?
Pet peeves. I got him.
Vote.
I don't know. Pet peeves and tactic that should be retired could be the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Let's do that. Let's do
Okay.
pet peeves.
Pet peeve.
But
Okay.
I don't have one.
Okay.
Oh, I do have one. Let me go first.
All right.
I'm going to steal it from you guys.
Launching Best Marketer, where I quiz my co-hosts. What are your launch pet peeves?
We talked about this a little bit earlier, but it gets very specific on my end, which is if you've got a launch checklist and then you don't take things off before you actually kick off launch execution, huge pet peeve, especially if you've built an Asana template and start duping it out and it auto assigns tasks. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten blog and content tasks for launches that did not need them. Pet peeve.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, my pet peeve is the launch blog post that starts with, we're excited to announce that today we're launching.
I was going to have to chime in if that wasn't one of yours, because that is mine. But even worse if it's in press release format, like it's, 1977, where it's like like in third person.
Yeah.
Oh,
Nobody
yeah,
cares that you're
do
excited.
not write a launch blog
This
in third
morning,
person.
dear marketers launched.
Yeah. And
Dear
you're excited?
marketers.
Like, of course you're excited. I don't care that
It's like-
you're excited.
It's like Moulton Borough, New Hampshire. That's the random place in New Hampshire I am right now. Moulton Borough, New Hampshire, comma. This
June
morning,
26th,
dear
2025.
marketers launched
5:27 p.m.
Dear
a
marketers.
glasses line. Okay.
Dear marketers, a leading podcast for marketing thought leaders and experts. Today launch a 3-part launch episode about launches.
About launches.
Additionally, founder and creator Emily Kramer launched glasses on her face.
Then it goes on and on and on. For more information, you can reach out to press@Dear Marketers.
Well, there would be a quote from you first, maybe a partner, and then, yeah.
I'm so excited to launch glasses on my face because I have blurrization right now. Also, I'm so excited to launch this podcast on product launches and do this press release about how much we hate press releases in product launches.
So I used to have a related pet peeve in my personal life that was people whose wedding websites said, "Welcome to our wedding website." I feel like I don't see that as much anymore, but I think all those like templatized wedding website builders would start with, and I'm like, oh my God, like come up with a better headline. It's so many
Welcome to our
words and
press
so
release.
little like useful information.
To our wedding website. Thanks, Devon. Thanks, Jenny, for another episode that went in lots of different weird directions. Thanks to our sponsors, Typeform, Kramer, Revenue Hero, and of course, Caspian Studios for helping us produce this. And we'll be back for our next episode and last episode of the season in a couple of weeks. Don't forget to read the newsletter that goes with this podcast. Thanks.